All right, maybe I'll get started here. Welcome, everyone. I appreciate everyone taking the time. We have a great panel to discuss conversational AI in the travel and hospitality industry. I'm excited about this panel. We have with us Manuel Castro from Aeromexico, Michael Nelson from Vonage, and Sherry Combs from PwC, and each of them will introduce themselves real quickly, and then we'll get started. And if folks have questions, they can put them in the chat, and we'll monitor as we're doing this Q&A panel, and perhaps ask some of the questions as they come in, and then we'll definitely save about 15 minutes towards the end for audience questions as well. And this is being recorded to be shared later. So if you miss the parts of it, you can always rewatch it. So without further ado, I'm Artie Merritt. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Bespoken. We're a conversational AI testing platform to test IVR and chatbots. We do accuracy testing, load testing, functional testing, and monitoring so folks can improve their conversational AI experiences that help improve that customer journey and increase customer satisfaction. So perhaps we can start out with the intros, and I can start with Sherry.
Okay, happy to start. Sherry Combs. I've been around the AI space for a very long time. Original days with IBM Watson. I was there quite a long time as a distinguished engineer and a partner putting conversational assistants in Africa many years ago. Then I went into Silicon Valley and I got to build systems for contact center companies. So kind of, if you guys know what Google Contact Center AI is, building solutions like that, we called it the Neural Intelligence Platform. Then I went over to Deloitte and started up and got to be a part of their conversational AI team. And we were doing amazing things, helping clients with conversational solutions. I came over to PwC in May of last year, and I'm also leading the charge with conversational AI, and we're applying amazing digital innovation to improve our clients' business outcomes using generative AI, conversational AI, conversational process automation, all the fun stuff. So we're having a really good time. So I'm really excited to be here. Worked with Artie forever, as you know. For the past few years, every year we do a what's cool and what's next, what's coming, and I always enjoy that. So happy to be here. Looking forward to your questions.
Thanks. I'm glad you're part of this too. It's exciting. How about Manuel?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. Happy to be here also. Well, Manuel Nalda from Aeromexico, currently in the technology innovation area. But several years ago, I started the chatbot program and all the conversational AI tools for improved customer experience in Aeromexico. We created a character that is iRobot that originally had only an image, but now it has also voice. So very happy to be here to talk about these topics that I'm passionate. And also to share what I think that airlines and travel and hospitality industry could do now in the future, in my vision.
Great. It's awesome to have you be part of this. And how about Michael?
Hi, everybody. Michael Nelson here. I'm with Vonage. I lead the North America partnership team for communication APIs. So that would be SMS, voice, and video, also WhatsApp. So our APIs are really part of the ingredients that fuel some of these conversational AI platforms that you see in the marketplace today. So prior to Vonage, I've had 20 years experience in the enterprise communication and contact center space. So many years of experience designing, implementing, selling, maintaining enterprise multi-vendor communication systems, as well as contact center solutions. So thanks for having me, Artie. It's a pleasure being here.
Well, thanks again, everyone. It's great to have you all be part of this. And like I mentioned, if folks have questions, you can feel free to add them to this Q&A button there on inside Zoom. And if we don't get them in the middle of the conversation, we'll definitely towards the end save time to go over them as well. So just how about we get started with why are airline and hotels or companies in the travel and hospitality space building conversational AI? What are they making use of chatbots and voice assistants and IVR for? And perhaps you can start with Sherry on that.
Sure. Yeah, happy to start. I think a lot of what has been created to date is not good. I'll say that right now. So I think that people in hospitality and travel industry, they're now realizing, to make things better so we have more user engagement, and I'll explain why I think that is. We're focusing on meeting the traveler where they are. So in the channel they want to use, the way they want to use it, if they want to cross channel, if they're driving or if they're working or if they want to speak or they want to talk, tap, type, it doesn't matter. So I think that what we've done to date is we've created a bunch of conversational bots that functionally work, but they weren't designed to be usable and natural, and people don't like to use them. So I see us as, because we're in the concierge and hospitality space in this industry, I see us as kind of leading the way of saying, okay, now how do we make these natural, usable, user-friendly, make them things that people want to use? So, and I think it's so important, in this industry in particular, because the back ends are so complex, and trying to get the right dates and information and everything to work together, I think is very, very difficult. So that's kind of why I think this is such an interesting area to focus on that user experience, user engagement, and making things that people want to use, that are helpful to them, right? So that's my bias.
Yeah, it's all about, being hospital is part of the, hospitality space. So one more way to be hospitable. How about Manuel? Why is Aeromexico building these, or why do you see?
Well, I think, but like many industries, we attend what we call general public. Everybody can buy a ticket, a flight ticket, and that means that we are talking with many different kind of people from many different countries, and people have many different ways to communicate. So industries like hospitality, as you recently said, need to deploy experiences in all the spaces that the customer are living or using. And depending on the country, you have to adapt your service to those channels. And there are several challenges like the integrations, like Sherry said, because the backends at least in my industry and in travel are very complex. But at the end, it's a matter of be part of the day-to-day life your customer, and I think it's simple like that.
Fair enough. How about Michael? What do you see an enterprise doing here in the travel and hospitality space?
Well, I see in this travel and hospitality space, I'd say in airline space, that they are using all the tools. They're using communication modalities like SMS and voice, but I see that they're also in silos. I don't see that they're consolidated into one system, meaning that they're very disparate. So you think about the concept of multi-channel versus omni-channel. I see a lot of multi-channel communications, one-way notification, not really engaging, but I see there's an opportunity for them to improve considerably. I mean, the technologies and tools are there right now for them to make a change, to really consolidate these communication silos, provide context within the conversation. So if you start out with an SMS message, notification, you can respond to it, then escalate to a live person with the context of that conversation intact. So I don't see that right now much. I've seen a few instances where they're doing bits and pieces of it, but I think there's an opportunity for the entire industry to improve considerably.
Yeah, it's interesting, the omni-channel approach or a multi-channel approach. And I think if you mentioned WhatsApp, are you seeing, like, one thing, there was a company we worked with prior to this, that was doing true multimodal, where it was a voice interface guiding someone through like a web or mobile experience. Are you seeing like airlines and hotels adopting those kind of interactions or that type of interface? Maybe, yeah, go ahead, Michael.
So I think a good example of that would be experience I had on a big airline a few months ago, where I was heading to New Orleans for that conference that we attended, and got on the plane, and then shortly after everybody loaded the plane, the pilot said that we had to deboard because there was a mechanical issue. So everybody got off the plane, stood at the counter to rebook their plane. I called the toll-free number. I was on hold for about 30 minutes on the toll-free number. They didn't know who I was. They had no level of personalization, and I was waiting in line. So while I was on the plane, I received an SMS message saying, "Hey, I can help you rebook this flight." So while I'm standing in line on hold, I clicked a button. It launched a HTTP session, and asked if I wanted to do a video session. Well, I said probably not appropriate right now because I'm in a noisy area, but I'd be happy to chat. So I started having a real-time conversation with somebody that actually was able to help me rebook my flight within 5 minutes. So I scanned my ticket, so it was multimodal. I was able to use image recognition to take a look at my ticket, know who I was, authenticate. And then in 5 minutes, she says, "Okay, I want you to walk 2 gates down and board the flight to Houston." And it took 5 minutes. So I thought to myself, why am I the only one using this modality? Everybody else is standing in line and probably on hold as well. So I think there's some, I don't know if the consumers are completely ready for these type of modalities, but they implemented it very well. I was very impressed with how they did it.
Yeah, part of it might just be awareness that was an option. I guess because you got the text message that helped with the awareness. How about, Manuel, you mentioned WhatsApp too. Do you see more folks interacting with WhatsApp, especially in, say, Latin America? Or
Yes. Yeah, we started with WhatsApp because, the penetration in Latin America is also practically 90% of Mexicans use WhatsApp. So it's an obligated channel, but it's based on text, with some buttons and images now, but it's based on text. So there is a challenge there. And we are trying to mix that experience with a web experience. We are experimenting also a feature similar to what Michael described. And it's also because some kind of data currently we cannot transmit it by WhatsApp, for instance, banking information. So in some cases, we started an interaction with the customers by WhatsApp, but at some point we put a link to follow up that experience, and that is the challenge, to move the entire context, like Michael said, also to a web experience. So the customers don't need to submit again any kind of information, and it's like a smooth transfer to another medium. In that case, it's because in a web environment, we can request the banking information. So in WhatsApp, it's supposed it's not safe because we say compliance, but in web, yes. So I think it's something that companies have to experiment a little bit, depending on what services their customers are requesting more. And in this stage, they have to prove if some kind of mix of these channels is going to work, and if they see that it's yes, so they have to enhance and integrate system.
yeah, fair enough. And Sherry, what are you seeing on like the multimodal omnichannel kind of
Yeah,
approaches?
this is like my favorite space, you guys. I call it zombie channel because many times, I'll just give you an example. It wasn't in hospitality, but some people just want to pick up the phone and call. So all we did is we created an experience on a voice channel, and then we said, can we send you a link? Yeah, sent a link. tap on the link, send them to a web form. They filled out the web form. They were so happy, but they were never going to go to that web form to begin with. So think of just doing that simple deflection bot. We took 2,000 calls a day out of the contact center. Just allowing people to call, say, can we send you a link? Yeah, send me a link. They go to a web form. They were so happy to have us do that, right? All we did was deflect their channels. So the zombie architecture that I like to talk about is it comes alive, like let's just say it comes alive on the phone. You move it, it dies, comes alive now on your, on the telephone, like through an IVR. It dies, it comes, now you start texting with them, and then you can spawn to where you're talking to them in a virtual assistant. We do this with mapping all the time, where we like to map to a clinic, right? We're talking to you on the phone with a virtual assistant. You're looking at your cell phone. We're giving you directions, right? And you're navigating on your mobile device, right? So that's multimodal. So the concept of, all these experiences coming alive on multiple channels or one channel and channel switching to another is exactly the kind of experiences we like to build to try to help people as they're moving around an airport, like you were talking about, Michael, or if they're driving, they can speak, they can't tap. When they get into a loud place, they can't speak, they've got to do other things. So that whole idea of meeting the customer where they are and going cross-channel is really, really, for me as somebody who likes these complex systems and user engagement, is really exciting for me.
Yeah, definitely. And I like how you said earlier, it's like meeting them on the channels that they prefer. Like that, I did a study towards the end of last year, and that was what came out. People want to interact on the channels that they prefer. And it interesting enough, it's skewed a bit to the text channels, like folks, did actually like that. I'm curious, what are some of the use cases though, that especially say the airlines or hotels, what are they doing with chatbots and IVR? I mean, there's the customer service part, but is there any unique use cases occurring there? And maybe Manuel, I can start with you, or any interesting use cases you saw with?
Well, to me, we have to start with simple use cases, and not the complex. Although the AI systems are increasing their capabilities, I think we need to keep it simple and grow in complexity step by step. So what we do is analyze what are the more repetitive tasks and simple tasks. For instance, flag status or check-in. Check-in is something that we implemented in WhatsApp, and is surprisingly for us very, very used by our customers. They go to WhatsApp, and in 1 minute they have the boarding pass. So that is the thing. We try to find small tasks during all the journey to be like a travel companion. So if after the journey, after the flight, the customers had some kind of issue with the baggage, so they can make the claim in the chatbot very quickly and receive a compensation. So that is our focus. So a small task, simple task during all the journey, to be like a travel companion for all passengers.
Yeah, I like that. Like, so it's for the beginning, during, and after the travel experience. How about Sherry, you seen any interesting use cases that stand out, like something?
Yeah, well, we see a lot of use cases in the back end. So like pilot scheduling, logistics, maintenance, and the heavy lifting in the back end to keep everything running. So, and then once something goes crazy with weather, it just spawns a whole series of, exception handling, which is very complex. So we're you just can throw a dart anywhere in the end-to-end process, especially in airlines, and it can be improved. There's no doubt. And you throw in all the legacy systems that you have to integrate with, it makes for really fun problems to solve, right? But yeah, what we're seeing is a lot around getting the pilots, since there's such a shortage of pilots, getting them to where they need to be on, when they need to be there. And if something happens with a weather event or a mechanical event, Are they overtime? So we have to think about a new crew. We're seeing a lot of stuff in that space.
Yeah, that's interesting because you start initially you think of the consumer interacting with the chatbot or IVR, but there's the flight attendants, the pilots, like they have their own sort of questions and issues that arise that they need help with. That's a good point. How about Michael? Any interesting use cases you've seen in the travel and hospitality space? Or
Yeah, I think Sherry mentioned the pilots, also flight attendants dealing with scheduling, getting information, any type of use case where you can improve the employee experience. So internal use cases for digital assistants. I think in an airport, the Dallas airport a few months ago, and they had like a digital human kiosk. So you think about combining digital human technology plus conversational AI, where you can go up and have a conversation, ask questions. I thought that was pretty cool use case. I think that's more futuristic, of course. And I think, for me, I'm really interested in the use cases where you start out with a self-service, maybe handle those mundane tasks, and then transfer it to a live agent with a context to the call, but also providing the agent with the assistance they need, like next best action, or
agents?
popping up knowledge base articles, perhaps, where it's like the end-to-end story, right? So you have the self-service for the customers, and then you have the agents that are supported by their own kind of virtual agent as well. I think there's a lot of potential there as well in those use cases.
Yeah, definitely that agent assist. I mean, part of it, you touched upon this earlier too, is the context and personalization. The more you know about the user, often the better experience you can provide. Maybe we can touch upon that a bit. Like, how are you seeing, say hotels and airlines using that personal information or context in these experiences? And maybe just continue with Michael on that.
Yeah, I was reading a book the other day. Someone shared with me an article, and I think the best example, I think, was the Ritz-Carlton, where they have so much information about every guest in their system. So when you book a room at a Ritz-Carlton, it knows, what pillows you like, if you need hypoallergenic pillows, or if you need the type of cookies your kids like, or what types of shows you want to go see. So I think at some point you're going to get to this hyper personalization, where even not just in the travel or hotel industry, but every industry has the opportunity to create these digital concierges that have hyper personalized service to all their customers. I mean, the technology is there. The challenge is obviously, how do you, the data silos and unstructured, structured data, how do you kind of get access to that and create those very personalized experiences? But I think it's on the horizon for sure.
Yeah, definitely. How about Sherry? How are you seeing the use of personalization?
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can talk about extreme personalization,
Yeah.
hyper personalization,
Yeah.
but what always makes me laugh is you guys think of IVRs.
Yeah.
Every single person gets the exact same experience. You call into an IVR, everybody gets the same experience. So I love talking about extreme personalization, because if I can know you before the conversation, so I hook to your CRM system, I can give you a different experience. If I know you're over 80 years old, I know it takes you 4 minutes and 15 seconds to pay a bill. If I know you're a millennial, it takes you 1 minute. So if you're over 80, I know this, some people, always talk about ethics and ageism and such, but we slow down, we use a male voice, we use gentrified language, we repeat, we speak in a frequency you can hear. That's personalizing the experience, because I know who you are before. Then during that experience, I can sense and respond and make that a better experience, right? So that's that whole, all kinds of crazy stuff you can do, sentiment analysis, tonal analysis, all kinds of stuff in the middle of the conversation. Then after the conversation, so I'm talking about before, during, and after, how you can personalize that, taking all that data and everything you just learned and applying it to the next conversation to make it better. And that's what Michael's talking about, that personalization is, as I learn, it's reinforcement learning into the next conversation, right? But we're so far from that. When I think about all that cool stuff I just said, still, when you call an IVR, we all get the exact same experience. And it's so annoying to me, because we can do so much better. We can start, giving people personalized experience based on how they want to engage, right? And I think that's where we want to be.
Yeah, moving more from the IVR to IVA and that kind of
Exactly.
Yeah,
We're so
definitely.
far. Yeah.
Yeah, it's because yeah, some people just I remember looking at partners that said they built IVR and it was still the number system. It's like press 1 for this, 2 for this. Like this isn't conversational AI. No one's speaking. anything.
Yeah.
And that was what came out of the survey too. Is folks really prefer they want the option to be able to speak freely or write in freely in these experiences. How about Manuel? How are you seeing the use of personalization at Aeromexico? Any interesting ways you?
I think it's a matter of user experience design, to have like a design principle, the proper personalization, and use during your design process inputs from, I don't know, linguistics and sociologists. That is rare to talk about because many managers, what they want is automate and to cut the times in the conversation. But what I saw, not only in Aeromexico, but in some companies, is the most they use these guiding principles in terms of design experience, they can achieve more human, let's say, like human experiences, not rigid. I think that is one of the challenges of these kind of channels, to avoid the rigid interaction. And the other aspect that I see is having a single source of truth in terms of customer information, and avoid query different systems that probably don't have the same version of information, and to centralize all the customer data and even like curate that data in order to be consumed by IVR, chatbots, voice assistants, in the same way. If I am talking with the Alexa skill, so I can receive the same kind of information because it's connected to the same source of information about my profile. So that is, for me, that is the other challenge to cover.
Yeah, definitely. And I can imagine, especially in the airline space, we were chatting about this before the session started. If you're on like shared codes with different airlines, like how's that information shared across both? And yeah, there can be some tricky. Yeah, it could be much more. Something that seems simple could be quite complex without those backend systems. Yeah, and then the other thing, just like in terms of personalization, I guess the more information you know about people, the less you have to ask, so then you can provide that better experience. Shift this a little bit, because one of the hot topics that is all in the news now, and everyone's experimenting with ChatGPT 3 and LLMs, and I'm curious what you all think about that in terms of the travel and hospitality space. Like, how can airlines and hotels make use of this? Are they making use of it, or how could they potentially? And maybe I could start with Sherry.
Sure. No, generative AI is so cool, and it's been around for a while. So it's just fun for me to see it getting all this attention finally. So with generative AI, where I see a lot of our use cases that we're looking at right now, it's a lot of it has to do with, I don't know if you guys know, CLOZE tasks. If you guys know what CLOZE, closed tasks, in which, and if you look it up, Wikipedia, you'll see where you can test a process to make sure the information makes sense, or if it's accurate. So let's just talk about it. I mean, I see this more in healthcare than anywhere, but it applies to this industry as well. When you're filling out a form or you're giving information, ensuring that that information is accurate or makes sense, right? Like, you told me you like this type of pillow, but now you're saying, please put these other pillows in there. Like, why are you telling me that? There's something in that you need to know about, right? So checking the information that you're putting in, you're giving to a form, is very much a use case that we're seeing in generative AI. And another thing we're seeing in generative AI is free speech. When you're at the front end, like trying to get you to the right agent, or if you're sending an email, making sure we're looking to see, using generative AI to get in the zone of what we think your intent driven, you know, what's driving the intent. So we'll start, I hope I'm not going too technical. So we'll start by just trying to use generative AI to figure out what the intent is, and then we'll switch over to an NLU based systems that's more directive to handle the issue. So we use it in the front end to get in the general space, and then we get more specific as we get closer to what we think you're asking for, if that makes sense. So filling out forms, close tasks, making sure there's some intelligence there. I see a lot of that. And then taking that general knowledge and getting more specific. So using generative in the front end and getting directive NLU closer to when you're doing real work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious, especially coming from the airline, Manuel, are you all exploring, say, Chat GPT-3, and would you even use it for responses back? Or I'm just curious how.
Yes, we are just starting to test internally some kind of use cases of proof of concept. What I think is this technology can help us to provide the user a more natural way to express what they need. So I think it's what Sherry said also. And we have to translate this intention detected by the model to specifics, and also we need to be careful about how to use the response. Probably we won't use directly what the model is responding and putting it in front of the customer. Probably we need to design the response in the final stage, but taking into consideration what the model is providing us. We need to take care about what the users see or listen. And at this point, we probably, all of us, heard about some not good experiences using this ChatGPT or other models. So companies still have to be carefully of how to take the output of the model and how to present it to the final user.
Yeah, definitely. I did a panel a while back for financial services, and one of the panelists, he said that the reason that this particular bank liked the chatbots is it could only respond with what they programmed it to do, where like the agents could go off script and start saying all sorts of other things. Like, no, for compliance, it only said what we wanted it to say. How about Michael? How are you seeing the LLMs and generative AI being used?
I think ChatGPT and other models. I think it's going to be a great tool for conversation designers or UX writers who are creating conversations to. I mean, I call it the cure for writer's block, because as soon as if I want to write an email or write a summary of something, I go straight to ChatGPT and start saying, hey, write me an email that says this, and it spits out a very nice email. Then I can go and edit and make it personalized. But I think it's a great tool for conversation designers to make their job easier eventually, as well as I think what's interesting to me is how this technology can be used in enterprises to, I guess, synthesize all the knowledge that exists within the organization, whether it's structured or unstructured data, knowledge-based articles from multiple systems, so that, for example, the agent assist model, as the customer is talking to the agent, the call is being transcribed using, transcription plus ASR technologies, and then finding answers that might exist elsewhere and creating responses based on those on the information that it's able to find within a knowledge-based system. I think that's very powerful, because I'll tell you, I think the big challenge in the contact center world, especially for agents, is high attrition, because their jobs are not easy. They typically have 2 or 3 monitors. They have 6 or 7, if not more, systems they're working within. They're juggling around different applications. So if we can use this technology to make their job easier, and make them more productive and provide better customer service, I think there's huge potential there. I just don't know what that looks like in the future, because I know a lot of these, especially ChatGPT, leverages content that's on the internet that's, I think, 2 years old or greater. So how do you take that technology? And I've seen examples. I think Microsoft had a really nice demonstration of taking a PDF, a long PDF, and then pulling out the bullet points from that PDF. So I think it's there. I think it's going to be very interesting in the next couple of years how they apply that technology in their own systems.
Yeah, definitely. You touched upon some interesting things, like using it for the fallback, basically fallback handling. I chatted with some platforms where they use it, where if someone writes or says something that doesn't, match an intent, they would basically expand, to generate different variations and see if any of those match an intent. The interesting thing, though, with all the ChatGPT and OpenAI is Microsoft did have the Taybot experience a few years back, if any remember that, where that one went a little bit sideways. But no, yeah, it's exciting to see what will happen in this space. I'm curious what we talk a little bit about like success metrics a bit here, like, part of deploying these experiences to provide, a better customer experience, increase customer satisfaction. Like, what are some of the KPIs that either airlines or hotels are looking at with chatbots and IVR and voice assistants? And I don't know, perhaps just start with Manuel with the airline himself.
Yeah, but I think there are several metrics that we can use. The best practice, at least for me, in my experience, is to take a few ones. Jobs done is, for me, one of the more important, and you have to define when is the job completed. What's mean that this process is successfully completed. Probably you are not providing a good answer for the customer, but it's the final answer and is what they need to know. And in that case, the job is done. And probably also CSAT and NPS, that kind of metric that are more focused on customer experience, always try to receive the feedback from the user, and having like a house light, for your decisions, to inform your decisions with this feedback from the customer. So CSAT, jobs done. My recommendation is not using session time, because a small session time doesn't mean that it's good. But I saw in many managers that they want to reduce session time, and probably that is not the best strategy, in my opinion. That is what I.
It's funny you mentioned that. I did an analytics platform, and like basic metrics people think of with websites, page views, sessions, that kind of stuff. That was the initial thing people would want to look at in the chatbots. Like, it's not, there's other things that's much more interesting. What are the people actually saying? What are they? Why are they contacting you? That's a bit more interesting. So, but yeah, but Michael, how about yourself? Any KPIs and things you see?
I think Manuel touched on a few. I think,
Yeah.
I mean, contact centers are always looking at cost per contact, per call. They're looking at first call resolution. They're looking at the number of times calls are transferred to a supervisor. There's all the traditional contact center KPIs that I think conversational AI platforms can help improve. But I also think there's other value to the organization with respect to improving the brand loyalty. And anytime you have a positive experience with a customer, that increases the brand loyalty, potentially increases total lifetime value of the customer, right? So you tie it to revenue. There's also opportunities to turn, I guess, conversations or customer conversations or interactions into sales opportunities. So if you hear something using some insights or understanding what the customer is asking, you can turn that into potential opportunity. I see. And then just providing information to the the leadership around your product. You know, what is the feedback you're getting from customers on your product, good or bad? What are your competitors doing? So in some cases, you know, you'll call into the call center and mention that the competitor does something better than you. So I think there's a treasure trove of information in the contact center that can be of value to the rest of the organization.
Definitely. Sherry, how about yourself? Any?
Yeah, I'll never forget many years ago. This was in insurance, though. I'm sorry it's not in hospitality or travel, but we were talking about them earlier. It's a warm handoff. Somebody calls in and you know, instead of saying re-enter your whole information, we pass that to a live agent. And so it was an agent assist on their screen. And we implemented this, and all the average handling time and all the metrics that we all like to talk about and agree having a low AHT or session time is not a benefit. But we looked at all that. But what we noticed is not only quality was going up, but we noticed attrition went down. And so I actually went out on the floor with the agents and I tried to figure out what was happening. And I remember an agent looking at me and saying, well, Sherry, they're not quitting. This is the reason why they're not quitting. People don't yell at us anymore because you gave us the answers. Yeah. We now have the answers. We can help people. They don't yell at us. I'm happier. So attrition goes down. So the cost of hiring improves. Training is reduced. And you can't believe what that did to that contact center's metrics. Just because we put a whisper agent on the agent's desktop and gave them the answers while they were speaking with the customer. So we were giving them information. And so that attrition going down. So another thing I was just going to mention is we hold these virtual assistants at such a higher standard than humans. Like 50% of, I was working with a bank, 50% of what their agents say in a branch is wrong. And we always talk about having our virtual assistants need to be 100% accurate and like, you know, can't make a mistake. Well, that's way off of what humans do. So I find it interesting how we are measuring with different sticks, a human versus a virtual assistant. And I think that's just fascinating as we progress in the future and try to use these systems. And we're so critical of what's going on with generative AI when humans are probably even a lot worse, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, those are just the things that I wanted to share.
Yeah, that's fair. I thought it was interesting, especially the text-based chatbots. People would tell you, well, no, not only would they ask the chatbot what they wanted, but they would tell you what they think after. You'd see it right there. And, you know, they definitely were the negative ones, but there are oftentimes people saying thank you and positive things. You know, it's kind of interesting. So just see if any of the audience or folks listening in, if you have any questions, you know, we have this Q&A you can chime in on. I think might be a chat too, but if you have questions, feel free to you know, submit them and we can ask the panelists here. There was one question about how will generative AI change the complexities around training bots? We talked a little bit about the generative AI, but how about making use of them for actually training the chatbots? Would anyone like to chime in on that? Perhaps. Yeah.
I'm happy to do it. I call it Ask Sarah. Because there's always somebody that's like the person who has the most information on a contact center floor. So for training, like if you're going to talk about training agents, so you want to create, like it's usually a woman, it's usually named Sarah in my experience, I swear. So anyway, we create like the most intelligent digital worker we can that continually learns. So when you have new people come in, they can ask Sarah. They don't have to take the time from a live agent, Sarah. They can ask the conversational intelligent digital worker, and that's a method of training. So they're not interrupting and it's constantly learning. So there's this concept of, I always talk about creating a knowledge garden. So a place where you put in information and it grows as you learn more things. So you're creating the most intelligent agent on the floor that people can ask when they're training or while they're working. So it's very powerful, and creating that intelligent digital worker for a business too, you know, for every single business could have, you know, a corpus of knowledge that anybody could conversationally query to get information. So it's very powerful.
Yeah, definitely. I've also seen just in terms of building the models, like folks, similar to what you're talking about, the fallback handling, using the LLMs for creating the training phrases, for a particular intent that can help, fill those out a bit. And then, oh, here we go, another one. What are your thoughts about the potential of conversational commerce via chat? Oh, interesting. Okay, so how do you all feel about conversational commerce, I suppose in North America here, inside chatbots IVR? Are you seeing any commerce actually occur inside them, and where might it be going?
Yeah, I think that we're definitely seeing that. I mean, Vonage has a platform that was through an acquisition called Jumper, which is, you think about having an ad perhaps in Facebook or WhatsApp or Instagram, and then you go from an ad to a conversation to a purchase all within that conversation. So I think we're seeing it more, I think, overseas in other countries, but I definitely see an opportunity to incorporate purchasing things through a chatbot is the future as well. So maybe you start out with a customer inquiry or question, and then the person on the chatbot turns that into a potential sales opportunity. Then you actually can transact that opportunity within the chat. I think it's totally feasible.
Yeah, one of it's the platforms themselves. I know early on, Facebook and Google Assistant had provided these means to purchase through those things, but then they come to find out not many people had their credit cards on file, say with Facebook, to actually do this. And people would often get kicked out to a web experience. So you're doing part of it, you're building your shopping cart, whatever it is, but then you get sent out to a website. It's kind of interesting. Anyone else seeing anything on the commerce side? No. Well, I appreciate everyone. Any other questions coming through? Or one last question I want to ask each of you, though, is where do you see the future of conversational AI going? Like, what are you excited about? What needs to change? Or what do you see on the horizon? Maybe we can start with Michael.
Yeah. So just a quick shout out first to Brian Jessup, who is actually implemented a very powerful conversational AI platform to front end his contact center. And so he mentioned that statistics show 70% would rather speak to a person, but I'm guessing that 100% just want their issue to be resolved quickly as possible. So shout out to Brian for that with Landry's. But anyway, so to answer your question, I think everything is going to get better. I think that the ASR is going to get better. I think the quality of text to speech is going to get better, more human-like. I think you'll see more models emerging, like model as a service. I read about this a few weeks ago, where if you're, for example, in the travel industry and you have training data that you have accumulated over a number of years, how can you monetize that and provide that to maybe other, airlines and sell it? I think that might be a trend as well. Digital humans is very interesting. Multimodal is obviously going to get better. So I think about if you're sitting in a on your phone or in front of your computer, why, rather than calling a toll-free number through a customer portal, why can't you just click a button and start talking to an agent or an intelligent agent or virtual assistant immediately without having to leave that modality? So I think everything is just going to get better. The technology will get better. Obviously, with ChatGPT, large language models are going to have a huge impact on this industry. It already is, but I think in the near future, things are just going to get more personalized, more human-like. Pretty bold prediction, I know.
Yeah, no, that's good. Well, it's the beginning of the year. It's still the beginning of the year. You see what happens. How about Manuel?
I will also provide a general prediction, but it's probably a good thing to be now using this kind of tools like large language models. But to me, the future is how to evolve from these sometimes rigid interactions for more natural, and to providing to the virtual assistants empathy and personality that probably are human concepts, but probably we need to explore these new technologies to do that. And also, I think we are going to start seeing some anticipated assistance. So instead of the customer go and start the conversation, probably the chatbot and the virtual assistants going to start the conversation using predictive and this kind of also AI based tools.
Yeah, more proactive, especially when you factor in the
Right.
things you talk about, the personalization, knowing about the people. Yeah, it's interesting. And empathy is a huge one. That's you can have a whole session just on that, building trust in these spaces. How about Sherry? What do you see as the future?
I think there's going to be a major shift from IT and developers to the business and the designers. So I don't think it's all going to be about the tech anymore. It's going to be more about how you make the tech work for you based on business outcomes. So I think the power that IT had with IVRs and telephony in the past is over. I think it's more about the designers in the future and building experiences that people want to use that are really truly moving the needle for business outcomes. So we're going to get out of the how we do things a bit, and we're going to get into the why a little bit more. That's what I think.
That's fair. Yeah, the business purposes behind all of this.
Mhm.
Yeah, and as the technologies get better and the platforms that the stuff that you all are working on gets better, it hopefully makes it a bit easier. Well, this is great. I definitely appreciate everyone being part of this, and for all the attendees too tuning in. We appreciate you taking the time. The recording will be posted online. We'll do a little write-up on it too, so you can see if you missed anything, you can go back and see it. But I just want to thank all the panelists for taking the time and being part of this.
Thank you, Artie.
Thank you. I love it. I always learn a lot. Thank you, guys.
All right, thanks. All right.
Everyone.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.